Hi everyone. I've really loved listening to what others have been sharing recently about worship, and I'm excited that we're going on this journey together as a community. Today I want to share a bit about what worship is for me. One of the main ways that I worship is when I can get away from the city and spend some time walking somewhere beautiful. I love going to the New Forest or walking along the beach, and I often find myself in wonder at how amazing our world is and giving thanks to God for all that He has made. Doing this, I believe, connects us with God's heart as we agree with what He thinks about creation. The creation story in Genesis 1 talks about God creating and then contemplating what He had made and declaring it good. He placed people on the earth to bear His image and rule over creation, caring for and bringing order to it, and then praising God for it. We know, of course, that we turned our backs on this vocation. Almost the entire biblical narrative tells the story of how God sought to draw us back to Him and finally in Jesus restore us to the role that He created us for. Along the way, we've done our best to trash God's artistry and deny His image in each other through things like slavery, oppression, war and religion. This is happening at a frenetic pace today. Instead of caring for creation, nurturing it and respecting it, we're abusing it. Scientists are telling us that we're in the midst of the 6th mass extinction of life on our planet, this time caused by our overexploitation of the natural world rather than by a natural disaster. Climate change is accelerating and nearing a tipping point. As Rich and Johnny said, I believe that justice and worship are intrinsically linked, and so I try to worship by taking environmental justice and my vocation to care for creation seriously. For the last 15 years, in Spain and the UK, I've cycled to work nearly every day. I try to recycle and reuse carefully. I compost. I try to avoid using the car whenever possible. We try to buy produce in season. We buy electricity and gas from a supplier of 100% renewable energy. I keep my phones as long as possible, and I support Greenpeace. All of these things I do as an act of worship to God, trying to honour and appreciate the beauty and the sanctity of all that He has made. I have to admit though, I also really struggle at times. Sometimes I feel that my efforts are little more than damage limitation, such as despite the fact that we have the smallest car that we can get away with, we still drive a lot. When I was growing up in church, personal sin was obsessed about, and things like sexual sin were the top of the evangelical deadly sins list. I often wonder though whether we might discover one day that God was equally, if not more, concerned with corporate sins, like the fact that we all drive cars every day, contributing in this country to around 40,000 deaths a year caused by air pollution, over 25,000 deaths or serious injuries and accidents, and untold damage to the global environment. Despite my best efforts and intentions, I'm complicit in the anti-worshipful destruction of God's creation every day, often not giving it a second thought. In recent times in the stream of the church that I grew up in, we've been so caught up in personal salvation and going to heaven that we lost sight of the fact that God's rescue plan was that through salvation and restoration unto the vocation that He had for us, salvation would come to all of creation. As Paul writes in Romans 8, all creation is eagerly waiting for God to show who His children are. Meanwhile, creation is confused, but not because it wants to be confused. God made it this way in the hope that creation would be set free from decay and would share in the glorious freedom of His children. We know that all creation is still groaning and is in pain, like a woman about to give birth. In the church, we also fell into some dodgy theology that somehow it's all right to let this world get trashed as God is going to destroy it anyway. This is the kind of theology that reportedly drives Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro to allow and even encourage the destruction of the Amazon rainforest, believing that in doing so, he's somehow hastening the end times. At the very least though, this kind of theology has led the church to withdraw interest from the issue and not see it as our problem. I don't believe the Bible says this at all, nor does it reflect what we know of the character of God, who didn't choose to let us be destroyed, but chose instead to redeem us. It's the destiny of all creation, I believe, to be redeemed. And I also believe that God chooses to do this through us as we are restored to our vocation. I imagine that when we enter the fullness of this after our resurrection, that we may have many hundreds or even thousands of years hard work ahead of us to restore the damage done to the earth. Amazingly though, despite the crisis that we find ourselves in, creation still declares the wonders of God. It still bears testament to who God is, with each day announcing to the next his faithfulness. And as we take steps to care for and steward what God has made and declared good, it is, I believe, an act of worship. It shows reverence for God and what he has made. And as I've said before, I've been feeling really challenged in recent months that as God's church, his people need to take responsibility. As many have said over the Black Lives Matter movement, we have no place to criticise those who are doing something if we remain silent and inactive over the issues. I also feel this about Greenpeace, who were started by the Quakers, and Extinction Rebellion. They take flack for some of their methods, but who else is speaking up? It should be us. Honestly, I don't know what to do about a lot of this myself, but I would love it if we could get creative together and take some small steps as our corporate worship to God. Could we find a way to share cars and maybe buy some electric ones? Could we start a community recycling scheme? Could we lobby the council or government? I don't really have any answers, but maybe if we can start with what little we have to offer, as Dan said recently, maybe God will help us multiply it.